Hi, this is Rebecca from Prep Scholar. At Prep Scholar, we get lots of questions about the TOEFL. In this video, we're going to do our best to answer our top 20 questions about the TOEFL. Okay, let's get started. Number 20. What is the TOEFL? Good question. The TOEFL is Test of English as a Foreign Language. Here's what ETS, the maker of TOEFL, says about the test on their website. The TOEFL test measures the ability of non-native English speakers to use and understand the English language as it is heard, spoken, read, and written in the university classroom. So, the TOEFL is an English language test that's supposed to test how well you would do in a university classroom. 19. Who takes the TOEFL? As you would guess from the description, the TOEFL is mainly taken by students who are not native speakers of English when they are applying to universities in English language countries, especially the United States and Canada. But that's not all. Some countries use the TOEFL for immigration visas. Sometimes the TOEFL is used for professional licenses like nursing. Some schools in European countries use the TOEFL to test students' English language abilities. If you're an English language learner and you hope to work or study abroad, there's a good chance you'll need to take the TOEFL at some point. All right. Number 18, how do I take the TOEFL? Well, the first step is to find a test center and test date. Most students will take the form of the TOEFL known as the TOEFL IBT. That test is given on a computer about 50 times a year. Test centers and dates can fill up quickly though, so try to reserve a test center and date several months before you actually plan to take the test. So, once you've found a center and a date, you can register and pay your test fee. We'll talk more about costs below. Once you're registered, you're eligible to take the TOEFL. Show up on test day and make sure to bring your ID and take the test. Let's move on to number 17. Where is the TOEFL offered? All over the world. No matter where you live, there is probably a TOEFL test center somewhere in your country. And if you live in a large city, there is probably at least one test center in your home city. Number 16. How long is the TOEFL? The test takes about 4 hours, including a break. You should also try to be at the test center a little early, so expect to spend about half of the day taking the TOEFL. Question 15. What is it like to take the TOEFL? There are 4 parts to the TOEFL: reading, listening, speaking, and writing. You'll normally take them in that order: first reading, then listening, then speaking, then writing. Each of these sections can be stressful for students. Speaking, for example, you are speaking your answers into a headset and all the students around you are speaking their answers at about the same time. Some students find this very distracting, but if you are prepared for it, then you can be ready for it. In general, the TOEFL is an unusual environment. Even if you're comfortable speaking English, you might be uncomfortable taking the TOEFL. And that's why it's important to prepare, and for your preparations to be as much like the actual test day as possible. Question number 14. How much does the TOEFL cost? Well, that depends. There's no single official price for the TOEFL. Your cost will depend on the particular country and test center that you choose. But generally it costs around $200 per test. because of the high cost of the TOEFL, we recommend really investing in studying for it. The TOEFL is an important milestone, and it's worth devoting as much time and energy as you can in preparing for it. All right, question number 13. How difficult is the TOEFL? The TOEFL is not an easy test. Many native English speakers don't even get a perfect score on the TOEFL. But it is a test you can prepare for, and the more you prepare, the better you will do. I'm going to talk more about how to prepare for the TOEFL. But let's talk some more about the TOEFL and why it might be difficult. Each of the sections is difficult for different students. So, let's talk about each of the 4 sections. 12. How difficult is TOEFL reading? The TOEFL reading has 3 to 4 reading passages with 12 to 14 questions per passage. The reading passages will typically be academic writing in English, the sort of thing that you might see in a university class. That's because, like I said earlier, the TOEFL is meant to test your ability to take university-level classes in English. Because of this, the passages can be very difficult for non-native speakers, and even for native speakers. However, you can answer the questions correctly even if you don't fully understand the passages. In some of our other videos, we give you advice on how to do that. So, it's important to be prepared for the TOEFL reading section. The passages will be difficult, but if you're prepared, you can get a great score. Question number 11. How difficult is TOEFL listening? All right, so the TOEFL listening will have around 6 separate recordings. Some of these will be selections from academic lectures, while the rest will be conversations. The conversations will also have academic topics. They will involve a professor talking with a student or some event on campus. The hardest part of the listening section is getting all the information. You only get to hear the recordings once, and often they can be very dense and spoken quickly. For this reason, it is crucial to take notes on the listening section. In our other lessons, we go into more detail about how exactly to take notes so that you can be prepared to answer the questions on TOEFL listening. Question number 10. How difficult is TOEFL speaking? As we said above, many students find TOEFL speaking to be the most stressful part of the TOEFL. That's because of how it works. So there are 6 questions, and you're expected to speak your answers to all of them into a headset at the same time as the students around you are speaking their answers. So, for this section too, it's important to prepare. Now, we think that you shouldn't prepare too much. Some students memorize answers to these questions and then try to use them on the exam. But we here at Prep Scholar recommend against that. It will make your speech sound artificial when your goal should be natural and fluid speech. But you should still prepare for the TOEFL speaking. In fact, we've created videos on how to prepare for all 6 kinds of questions you might see on the TOEFL speaking section. And number 9, how difficult is TOEFL writing? On TOEFL writing, it feels like you have much more time than on the other sections. 20 minutes for one essay and 30 minutes for the other essay. And you can go back and revise your essay as much as you want. But that doesn't mean TOEFL writing is easy. You won't be able to use a spelling or grammar checker the way you might when you write for school, and you will be expected to write a well-structured essay. We strongly recommend practicing writing TOEFL essays before you actually take the test. And, of course, watch our videos on TOEFL writing. Question 8. How is the TOEFL scored? Let's talk about TOEFL scores. Each of the 4 sections of the TOEFL is scored individually. Your score on one section is independent of your score on every other section. For each section, you can get a minimum score of 0 and a maximum score of 30. Scoring for the reading and listening sections is simple. Most of the questions are multiple choice. If you get the answer right, you get a point. Sometimes a question will ask for 2 answers, and you will get a point for each correct answer. Your score on these sections is based entirely on how many questions you got right. Scoring for speaking and writing is more complicated. Your answers will be graded on several dimensions. On speaking, you are graded on the clarity of your speech as well as the development of your topic. Similarly, on writing, you are graded on the quality of your writing as well as the content of your essay. 7. Will I be penalized for guessing on the TOEFL? No, you are not penalized for guessing on the TOEFL. On the reading and listening sections, you do not get any points taken off for getting answers wrong. So if you're unsure of a question, don't leave it blank. Take a guess. The speaking and writing sections don't use multiple choice questions, so you can't really guess, but a similar lesson applies. When you're unsure of what to say, don't say anything at all. Go ahead and say something. Try your best. Often, doing something is much better than doing nothing at all. Question number 6. What's a good TOEFL score? Well, that depends on you. There are 2 ways of looking at this question. One definition of good is just better than average. According to some recent data, the average TOEFL score is 84. That varies a little from year to year, but it's around the typical average score. So, on one definition, a good TOEFL score is any score better than an 84. If you got above an 84 on your TOEFL, you should be proud of yourself. But many of our students are interested in a somewhat higher score. For these students, a good score is one that helps them meet their goals, and often an 84 is not enough. Well, why not? That's because many TOEFL students are trying to get into English-speaking universities, and these universities often demand a minimum TOEFL score. 100 is the most common minimum. So, on this definition, a good score is 100. For some schools, it can be even higher. In conclusion, don't worry about other people. What a good TOEFL score is for you will depend on you and your personal goals. Number 5. How do I get a 120 on the TOEFL? Some students aim at getting a perfect score on the TOEFL, a 120. It's always good to set big goals. In fact, we're planning to release a video on this soon. So, if you're a subscriber, we'll let you know about that video as soon as it comes out. Question 4. How should I prepare for the TOEFL? Great question. This is probably the most important question you can ask about the TOEFL. First, practice English. Practice reading English, practice listening to English, practice speaking English, and practice writing English. This can be difficult, especially practicing speaking English if you're not in an English-speaking country. But it's worth it. Practice whenever you can. But practicing English isn't enough to do well on the TOEFL. You can be pretty good at English and still have difficulty with TOEFL questions. So you need to practice specifically for the TOEFL. One good way is by taking practice tests. We've created several free practice tests for the TOEFL. For many students, however, this isn't enough. That's why we offer a complete course on the TOEFL. It was developed by TOEFL experts, and we're very proud of it. We believe that it is the best possible way to prepare for the TOEFL. In fact, we're so sure it's good that we make you a promise. Increase your TOEFL score by 15 points or your money back. You can try the course right now at TOEFL.prepscholar.com. All right, question number 3. When do I get my scores? Your scores are available online about 10 days after you take your test. A few days after that, your full TOEFL score report will be available. In addition, your scores will be mailed to any schools that you have selected as score recipients. Question 2. Can I retake the TOEFL? Yes, you can retake it as many times as you want. But the best strategy is to be prepared for the TOEFL the first time you take it so that you don't need to retake it. Prep Scholar is devoted to preparing you to do that. And finally, question number 1. How do I get more information about the TOEFL? There are lots of sources of TOEFL information out there. Some are great, but some are not as good. At Prep Scholar, we are devoted to creating high-quality TOEFL materials and answering questions about the TOEFL. So, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Visit our blog, www.prepscholar.com/TOEFL/blog. Follow us on Twitter. Join our Facebook group. In short, keep in touch with Prep Scholar to get the very best information available about the TOEFL. Thanks for watching, and see you at Prep Scholar TOEFL.